Mic check, 1 2 1 2 1 2. Back with another episode. This is my cousin Zoe. Say hi, Zoe.
Hi.
All right, so today we're going to talk about anxiety. Okay, so Zoe, I got a couple questions for you, if you don't mind answering. So, do you have anxiety, first off?
I do.
So do I. I think everybody does. So, some ways to hint if you have anxiety. Let's go over that first. Hints of anxiety are feeling tired, restless, or irritable, feeling shaky or trembly, dizzy or sweating, being unable to concentrate or make decisions, trouble sleeping, worrying about the past or future, thinking something bad will happen, headaches, tummy aches, muscle pain, dry mouth, pins and needles, noticing your heartbeat gets stronger, faster, or irregular, or you get shortness of breath. Sounds pretty accurate, right?
Yep.
All right. So what do you think triggers your anxiety?
I think a lot of different things. Sometimes it's hard to even tell. Sometimes you just kind of feel anxious. For me, like having a lot of responsibilities, different things that I need to do the next day, things like that.
So do you think school triggers your anxiety?
100%.
Okay, I think school was my number one thing for anxiety too. Once school kind of stopped, the anxiety started dwindling a little bit, you know, but then the anxiety of adulthood came in. So then that was a different type of anxiety, which seemed to be actually more intense for some reason. But then that goes away a little bit. Then you become, it takes time. It's a coping mechanism. So anxiety really leads to people worrying. So you say, are you a worrier?
Yes.
Do you worry a lot?
I do.
What do you worry about?
Everything. I worry about family, friends, like people I care about. I worry about my future, what I'm going to do with my life. Yeah.
So how do you worry about your friends and family? Do you get ever like, if your mom's not answering the phone, do you get that thought like, oh my God, she's hurt or something might be wrong? That's a bad feeling. So when you have anxiety, do you say that you need help from other people, or do you think you're stubborn to get help from other people?
I think I used to be a lot more stubborn. As I've kind of gotten a little bit older, I've accepted help from others more and realized that it's not a bad thing to ask for help.
It's definitely not. And I think that in the beginning, it's almost nerve-wracking to ask for help. And you kind of don't even know what to ask because you don't know what you're feeling in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can somebody even help me if I don't even know how to explain what's going on?
Yeah.
I felt like my number one issue with anxiety was people would just kind of tell me to suck it up, or tell me that I'm not thinking the right way, or oh, you're being a pussy or something. I used to hear that a lot. But it's like, once you can open up about it, I feel like bringing in help from other people really helps anxiety, because it's not something that you can do alone. So do you think, does getting excited ever give you anxiety?
Yeah. I feel like any super heightened emotion kind of kicks that anxious feeling in.
So, like, let's say you still do gymnastics, right?
No.
Or not so much?
Not
All right, so
so
let's
much.
say when you were doing
I did.
gymnastics, you have like a competition coming up or something. Do you feel more excited or more worried about it?
For that, I would say it was pretty half-half.
Half and half.
I think, yeah. And it helped because another thing of like having your teammates and everyone's support, and you're all kind of feeling that stress. I think having that group helped a lot with the worries, which kind of ties back to the letting people help you.
Yeah, I agree. And you were good at gymnastics too. So to develop a worry or a fear over something that you're good at and kind of want to do, it's like it almost gets in the way of your everyday life. And for some people, it will keep you in the house.
Yeah.
And you got to really be able to break out of that. Let me see. So what's your number one coping mechanism when it comes to anxiety?
I would say Honestly, like just giving time is a huge thing. Sometimes you just kind of have to sit through it and wait it out. Other than that, listening to music, trying to distract myself with things, talk to friends, go outside even, just change the scenery.
Change of scenery definitely helps. That definitely could help. So there's a couple rules actually to follow for anxiety. I don't know if you've heard of them before. Have you ever heard of the 3-3-3 rule?
I think so.
So the 3-3-3 rule, it asks you to name 3 things that you can see, identify 3 sounds that you can hear, and move 3 different parts of your body. So when you do that all at once, it's able to, in a sense, ground you and bring you back to a calmness. There's also a 5-5-5 rule. Have you ever heard of that? The 5-5-5 rule is breathe in deeply for 5 seconds, hold the breath for 5 seconds, and then breathe out for 5 seconds. Have you ever done that?
I have. I've also heard it as called the box method.
The box
breathing.
method? The box breathing.
It's like a square kind of, the same on every side, like in, out.
Do you think it helps?
I think at a certain point of anxiety, I think sometimes you get too anxious to even do that.
Once you get into panic attack mode, it's
then
over.
It's gone.
You
But
got to
I
get it
think,
before.
Yeah, earlier in the anxious stages, then yeah.
So what happens if like, have you ever had those panic attacks where it got out of control?
I have.
I have as well. So what happens in that situation? How did you find yourself getting out of it? Or is it really just time?
I think really just time. I think there's like, you can tell yourself to do all these things when you're not in that state, but then the second you're in that state, it's kind of like you can't really like relax enough to think, let me do this or let me do this, this will help. For me, it's really just like I just have to get through it. And like I know there's only so long that your body can be in that panicked state. So eventually it will just kind of ease down.
Eventually it will. But there are some things that there are long-term negative side effects that come from not handling your anxiety right away. And if you don't treat anxiety, it could progress into depression, and it could progress into some serious mental disorders. Do you ever feel yourself like getting towards that, or do you think that you've kind of got it under control at this point?
At this point in my life, I feel pretty good about it. I have struggled with depression. I've been on different meds, different therapists. I think it's definitely kind of once you start going down that kind of spiral, it's very hard to get out of.
So hard to get out of. I struggled with it. I remember my first panic attack. I was sitting on my couch when I was 14 years old. And it was around the time, I think I was in like 6th grade-ish, and it was around the time when I really stopped going to school. And I remember for a whole weekend, I was on the couch and I thought I was going to die. I was so sick to my stomach and my body was so weak that I didn't know what it was. And my mom she thought I was sick at first too. And then a few days went by and there was no like symptoms of illness, but I was just so weak and in just such a weird state of mind that I eventually figured out that was just a really long panic attack. And it feels like, for some people, it feels like you're dying. It could feel like that.
Yep.
So are you on medication now for it?
I'm on medication more for my depression now. I've kind of...
Do you think it helps?
I do. And I think it helps with the anxiety too. You know, I think once you're just kind of in a better mental state, generally it helps with the anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, I took, what are you on? I took Zoloft.
I'm on Zoloft.
Yeah.
I used to be on Prozac for the anxiety. And then I've been on a couple different things. I've been on Abilify. Now I'm on Zoloft, and I take hydroxyzine as needed. Kind of use that as, I take that a lot, like when I can feel myself kind of building up to a panic attack. It helps kind of just calm me down enough to kind of think through everything.
Yeah, I agree. I was on Zoloft. I remember I started taking Zoloft right around that first panic attack I had. My mom was like, okay, we're not doing this. And she put me on Zoloft, and helped immediately. Well, not immediately. It took a couple days to like
Yeah.
get into my system, and then once it got into my system, it really kind of just took everything away. And then I remember the first time I went to jail, I didn't have access to the Zoloft right away, and I had to go for a while without it. And then I got moved to a certain floor, and then they were finally able to give me access to the Zoloft again, and I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not going back on it. So it went, and then it was really hard after that. And I think that if it wasn't for me being in jail with absolutely like you have to figure it out. Like you're alone. And when I was in jail, I didn't have a bunkie, and I was only allowed out of my cell to grab my breakfast. Then I went back in to eat, and then I would bring the empty tray out. And then same thing with lunch, same thing with dinner. So I'd maybe be out for a total of 5 minutes in the day. And for the first month and a half, it was just that. So it was me completely alone in general population, just going out just to grab my food, and I'd go right back into my room. And they didn't have any, I didn't have any connections there, so I couldn't get any books, I couldn't get anything. So it was really just mentally alone, and I had to really figure it out. And I think that if I didn't have that opportunity, I think I may or may not still be on the medication to this day. How do you feel about being on the medication for future use? Do you think you're eventually going to wean yourself off? Or?
I hope that eventually I can kind of exist without it, but if I have to, if it's what keeps me kind of being able to function like anyone else, I'll do it, but I would love to be able to get off of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's not something that you can easily do. And how you're only 16, correct?
Yeah.
So yeah, when I was 16, I was on it. Definitely, I was on it. I didn't go to jail for that first time until I was 18. So it was still a couple years ahead of you of being on it and being able to kind of learn about it a little bit more, because I feel like the more you know about it, the more you can handle it. But it's such an unknown thing for a lot of people that you kind of just don't know what to do with it sometimes, and you get so stuck in a bad pattern.
Yeah.
Savannah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, having good family is definitely a number one way to treat your anxiety.
It is.
People around you, it's important to get help. It's not something that you can do alone. It's not a battle to take on solo.
Yeah.
If you need medication, I suggest going on the medication. I suggest getting a therapist if you need it. Have you ever done therapy?
I do it weekly.
Weekly.
I do it every Wednesday.
Do you find that it helps?
I do. I think just even if I don't have anything specific like anxiety or depression related, just being able to talk about everyday life and maybe even little things you don't even realize are stressing you out, really it can kind of just like get some weight off your shoulders.
Especially in a judge-free zone.
Yes.
Not with your mom or your dad like, oh, what the hell? What is she talking about?
And I think especially in high school, because high school is just, it's a lot. There's a lot of judgment, a lot of different opinions on, how you should be living your, like, starting to go into, like, the next steps of your life. Like, now as a junior, it's like, you should be going to college and you should be getting these grades and doing these, like, SATs and all that stuff. And I think, there's so many different options and different opinions that help to talk through with someone else.
I agree, because other people's opinions can be degrading, but they're also necessary, because some people are able to vent good opinions. You just have to be able to weed through them, because not all opinions are good. Everybody is entitled to their own. Everybody has their own. Everybody's is different. Some are good for some people, some aren't for some people.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good. We'll call that an episode. See you on the next one.